Thank you very much, and I just want to thank all of you for coming in today. It's been a really good discussion, and as you've said there, it's about identifying maybe elements that are working well and then areas that we have to focus on and work on. You know, close to, just looking at it here, how many Ukrainians have fled? How many people have actually fled their country? We're talking about at least 8 million people that have been displaced, and according to a recent report here from the UN, you're talking nearly 14 million people. 14 million people out of a country of 40 million, second largest by geographic size in Europe. And the Ukraine is part of Europe. We are part of Europe. And our response has to meet that demand. And that demand is now, and it's not in a few months' time, it's right now. And the government is doing that. There is a whole of government approach, but there also needs to be a whole of agency approach, a whole of country approach. There is a demand on everyone here to, I suppose, step up and to see how we can best support these families that are coming into Ireland. We have the majority, as you've said there. People have asked, well, how are other countries faring? Well, we know that there's nearly 3.8 million that went to Poland. I think there's 2 million at the moment, over 1.6 returned back to the Ukraine. There's a number, like large numbers, tens of thousands that are going back to the Ukraine nearly every day now. But that still means that there's a huge demand for families that have nowhere to go. No homes, no cities, no towns. These have been destroyed. The best thing that we can do for children in our educational system is to provide safety. Number one, safety, and a place that is safe and a place that gets them back into a routine, that reduces the trauma that they've faced and that they've endured over the last number of months. Now, we can do the same thing for their parents and their grandparents that are coming here as well. But number one, we have to look after the children, and that's really why you're here to speak with us today. I just want to point to some of the few elements that you've spoken about as well, and to thank. I mean, I know the great work that each of your agencies do. I mean, from Bernardo's, I know how you tackle, I mean, you see on the front line children that are disadvantaged and I suppose that are dealing with a lot of this all through the period of time that we've seen here. You've over 45 service locations. I really liked how you're providing training amongst all of the other things to hotel staff, housing Ukrainian families who've been bereaved. I really liked that. I thought that was really thinking and forecasting far ahead. I know that there's going to be an awful lot about getting children back into routine, and I suppose I might just ask the importance of routine and how that is crucial when children arrive in here. Just under the Irish Red Cross, I'm sorry, Meg, apologies, mixing up at Meg, just under the Irish Red Cross Migration Services, I know that you're working with so many other populations as well, you know, refugees coming from Syria and Afghanistan too. But the importance of the active casework support that you're providing to Ukrainians that you might want to mention, maybe because it's not just educational, you're obviously looking there at medical, sports, social welfare and education, and I suppose just your engagement, because that is a cross-departmental government. As a government, agencies, departments are working together to make sure that we're providing the utmost to the people arriving here to us. Just from the Irish Refugee Council, I think, Nick, I was just going to ask a little bit about the education fund, if you can give me a few comments on that. And just to Nuala, representing the Ombudsman for Children, thank you very much for your contribution as well. I really welcomed that you've mentioned that the NCSE are part of the regional educational language teams that are within, I suppose, each of our counties. So each county is working with the educational training boards and again the HSC, who I believe have really come to the fore in a lot of these areas to support children in terms of finding places and also school capacity. But how important is it that the NCSE is in there within those Rails teams? And I'll leave it at that. Garmhagas. Thank you. And I might ask for the first person to respond, maybe from Bernardo's. Clodagh, please. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for your input and your questions, Deputy. So I suppose from our point of view, what I'd like to talk about is that what you mentioned about routine and the importance of routine. So routine, it ties into everything that we've talked about today: safety, security. When a child is traumatised, they need to know what's happening next. They need to know what part of this is in their day, what their day is going to look like. They're always scanning their environment for threats, and any sense of uncertainty or sudden change or things being different each time it can be re-triggering for a child who's experienced trauma, and in particular a child who's fled a war, left their home suddenly. A sudden movement again, or a sudden change, or any sense of uncertainty can re-trigger that and make them believe it's going to happen constantly, and really I suppose, be difficult for them to regulate their nervous system. You know, Deputy O'Sullivan had asked earlier on about when children are able to learn, and it's when their nervous system is regulated, balanced. When they're in balance, they can learn, they can engage, they can interact with their peers. So certainty, routine and security is all about that, achieving that safety that you mentioned. And I think an important part of that too is just in terms of the other elements that then become really in the forefront is that choice, control, coming back to accommodation, you know, how they live, where they live, how they go to school, where they go to school, how that works, and being considerate with all of those things in the long term is going to be really, really important.
Clodagh, thank you very much. I might move to Meg, actually, if that's okay. Thank you.
So just to clarify that your question was to comment on the work of other agencies in terms of active casework support for Ukrainians in Ireland?
Yes, please.
Okay, so having systems in place, like a streamlined process that's in Ukrainian for medical card applications, has been hugely successful. It gives service users access to healthcare treatment, and a less fear about the financial implications of seeking medical support. Having systems in place like that is very successful and very useful, and it shows that access of language is key for supporting people who've been relocated.
And is that in an online way, Meg, or is that sort of just that there would be translators available? So is it that it's been provided online, the translation of...
The form itself for a medical card application is available online in Ukrainian and English side by side on the same form, in the same way that a lot of our forms would have Irish and English on the same sheet. It's also been shortened down. Instead of being a 5 or 6 page application, it's a 2-page. It's very basic information. It doesn't require some of the additional things needed for an Irish medical card applicant, and that has been very useful for people to have access to healthcare.
Thank you so much.
And then social welfare, the same aspects where people have quick access to a PPS number, social welfare payments, has been very useful and very successful.
Thank you so much, Meg. Just conscious of time there as well. I might ask Nick if you'd like to come in for a few minutes, and then Nuala. Thank you.
Yeah, so our education fund is coming up to be the 5th or 6th year in existence. It's open for 1 month a year in July. It's open to international protection applicants and refugees to apply to, and it gives grants. I think our average grant is approximately €350, so it would be a grant for a course itself, travel, or resources to allow somebody to study. And we're grateful for the donors we have to it. The fund has grown in size, and we now have two people on our education team, our education officer Charlotte Byrne, and our education assistant Rosemary Kunene. So it's a really useful tool, I think. Just coming on to what Megan just spoke to, we also have a helpline as well, which is staffed by 5 Ukrainian speakers. And we've received more than 850 calls so far, and that would be answering calls from people in Ireland and elsewhere about anything and everything, I suppose, about their situation.
Well done. That's great to know. And finally, sorry, Nuala, if we have time. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I suppose you can't underestimate the importance of the interagency approach that they have with these regional teams. So that joined up thinking is just going to benefit children. I think the importance of the NCSE being involved is critically important, because some of these children are very young and their needs are only going to emerge gradually over the next year, with teachers and from parents. So it's really important that the NCSE are in there at an early stage to support schools, to give the resources that they need through SNA or whatever other means. But by having them there at an early stage, hopefully we might be trying to get ahead of the problem, which I think is a critical theme that we're all seeing from today.
Thank you so much. I know we have a lot of pressures ahead of us, but I suppose it is about seeing how do we best use the resources that we have. Gurmila Magat. Thank you, Chair.